The banquet hall of the Four Seasons Hotel in the heart of Manhattan was decorated with impeccable taste. Gold and white balloons, fresh flowers, and elegant table settings created an atmosphere of luxurious celebration. More than 100 guests gathered to celebrate the golden wedding anniversary of the Andersons, one of New York's most respected high society families. Victor Anderson, owner of Anderson Construction Group, looked immaculate in his navy blue Tom Ford suit. At 73 years old, he maintained the commanding posture and authoritative gaze he used to direct his board of directors. His speech was refined by years of public speaking, and every gesture radiated the confidence of a successful businessman. Marina Anderson-Nierkova, who had immigrated from Russia in the early 70s, carried herself with dignity, though close friends noticed her uncharacteristic paleness. Her elegant Carolina Herrera dress accentuated her still slender figure, and the diamond necklace, a gift from her husband for their 45th wedding anniversary, spoke eloquently of the family's wealth. Their children, Michael, the chief financial officer of his father's company, Jessica, a renowned cardiac surgeon, and Alex, a successful attorney, proudly delivered their congratulatory speeches. They spoke about how their parents had always supported their ambitions, provided the best education, and instilled the right values. Society page photographers captured the beautiful picture of family happiness, unaware that in just a few hours they would be documenting very different scenes in Marina's luxury handbag worth more than $5,000 lay an envelope containing photographs capable of destroying the reputation of one of New York's most influential businessmen. 6 months ago, while sorting few documents in her husband's home office, Marina accidentally discovered a false bottom in one of the drawers of an antique discovery made on that rainy October evening turned her entire understanding of her lived life upside down. Photographs, bank statements, and a birth certificate revealed the existence of another family in Boston, just 4 hours' drive from their luxurious mansion in the New York suburbs. The envelope Marina discovered contained photographs dated from various years. They showed a woman around 40 years old, Sarah Johnson, a former employee of Victor's Boston branch. Next to her, in most photos, was a boy who bore a striking resemblance to a young Victor. According to the birth certificate, James Johnson was now 15 years old. After discovering the photographs, Marina hired a private investigator, Frank Torres, a former New York Police Department officer. Over 4 months of investigation, Torres compiled an impressive dossier. Victor had purchased a home in an upscale Boston neighborhood under Sarah Johnson's name in 2005 for $2.8 million. Large sums were transferred monthly to her account from offshore accounts registered in the Cayman Islands. The real estate development, a subsidiary company, in 2004. Despite lacking the necessary qualifications, her annual income exceeded $400,000, not including generous bonuses and company stock options. Bank statements showed Victor's regular expenditures in Boston: expensive restaurants, jewelry stores, elite private schools. All these expenses were carefully disguised as business trips and corporate expenses for maintaining double bookkeeping. Victor used the services of a little-known auditing firm, Marshall & Co., which turned a blind eye to questionable financial transactions. For appropriate compensation, James attended the prestigious Roxbury Latin School, where annual tuition cost more than $50,000. In school documents, Victor was listed as the father under the name Victor Johnson, supposedly divorced from Sarah, but actively involved in his son's life. He regularly attended parent-teacher conferences and school events, carefully choosing dates when his absence from New York wouldn't raise suspicions. Witness statements collected by the detective painted a picture of a perfectly normal family. Victor spent approximately 1 week each month in Boston, explaining his absence as necessary oversight of the company's branch operations. Over the years, he hadn't missed a single one of James' birthdays, often took him to baseball games, and even arranged membership at the prestigious The Country Club, where they regularly played golf. The investigation showed that the story of Victor Anderson's second family began in 2003 at a corporate event in Boston. Sarah Johnson, then working as a junior sales manager, caught Victor's attempt mentioned due to her resemblance to a young Marina. According to former colleagues' testimonies, their affair began almost immediately, but developed extremely cautiously during the first year. Victor created an elaborate system of business trips. Every fourth Thursday of the month he supposedly flew to Chicago for investor meetings, when in reality he was heading to Boston. His personal assistant Gregory Pierce later confessed to investigators that he helped organize these trips, believing he was covering up a typical affair, not the existence of a second family. In 2004, Sarah became pregnant. Victor acted quickly and decisively through a network of shell companies. He acquired a mansion in the Brookline area of Boston. The 750 square meter house was registered to Horizon Properties LLC, incorporated in the British Virgin Islands. A complex system of offshore accounts was created to manage the financial flows. Victor greeted James's birth in 2005 in London, where he was supposedly conducting merger negotiations. In reality, he spent 3 days at Boston's Brigham and Women's Hospital, where a luxury maternity suite had been reserved for Sarah. All medical expenses were processed through a specially created insurance company. To ensure confidentiality, Victor hired an entire team of professionals: Sarah's personal driver, round-the-clock security, housekeeper. All signed strict non-disclosure agreements. Staff salaries were 2 to 3 times market rates, ensuring their loyalty. James grew up receiving all the privileges of a child from a wealthy family: private music lessons, tennis courts, memberships, and elite clubs. Victor spared no expense. Meanwhile, the boy was registered in school documents as James Johnson, and all his friends and their parents knew Victor exclusively as Mr. Johnson, a successful businessman who frequently traveled for work. By 2020, the total amount of funds transferred to support the Boston family exceeded $15 million. This money was channeled through a network of at least 7 offshore companies registered in various jurisdictions, from the Cayman Islands to Singapore. Each transfer was carefully disguised as legitimate business operations. At 9:45 p.m., when the celebration reached its climax, Marina requested to speak. The hall fell silent, expecting another touching speech about happy family life. Marina ascended to the small stage where a string quartet had been performing all evening. In her hands, she held an A4-sized envelope that had been in her heir's handbag all evening. Today I want to tell you the true story of our family. Marina began taking out the first photograph on the large screen, intended for showing family chronicles. Appeared a photo of Victor embracing Sarah Johnson in front of their Boston home. The date on the photograph was August 2023. Absolute silence fell over the hall. Victor, seated at the central table, turned pale but maintained external composure. Their eldest son, Michael, slowly rose from his seat, his eyes fixed on the screen. For the next 15 minutes, Marina methodically presented evidence: bank statements, property deeds, James' school documents. Each new slide was accompanied by quiet exclamations from the guests. The photograph showed Victor at school events, family celebrations, and vacations with the Boston family. Jessica, their middle daughter, was the first to break the silence. "Dad, is this true?" Her voice trembled. Victor slowly stood up, surveyed the silent hall, and said, "I can explain everything." But there was nothing to explain. The documents spoke for themselves. Alex, the youngest son, and experienced attorney, quickly assessed the legal implications. He took out his phone and began taking notes, his professional instincts overriding his emotions. Michael, being the company's CFO, turned white, realizing the scale of financial machinations that had occurred right under his nose. Among the guests were members of Anderson Construction Group's board of directors, business partners, and representatives of city elite. The reputation Victor had built over decades was crumbling before their eyes. Journalists invited to cover the celebration frantically wrote notes and took photographs. At 10:15 p.m., Victor attempted to leave the hall but was stopped by hotel security. It turned out that Marina had contacted the police in advance, and detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit were already waiting in the lobby. The basis for their presence wasn't marital infidelity, but serious financial violations. Covered during the private investigation the next morning, all leading New York publications ran headlines about the collapse of the Anderson empire. The Wall Street Journal devoted an entire spread to financial machinations at Anderson Construction Group. The company's stock plummeted 47% in the first hours of trading, leading to a temporary trading halt on the exchange. Police conducted simultaneous raids on the Andersons' New York mansion, Sarah Johnson's Boston home, and the company's headquarters. More than 300 boxes of documents and 12 servers containing corporate information were seized. Preliminary investigation showed that the amount of financial violations could exceed $50 million. Marina immediately filed for divorce, hiring one of the most renowned family law attorneys, Eleanor Steinberg, as compensation. She demanded 70% of jointly acquired property, including the controlling stake in the company. Her position was strengthened by the fact that a significant portion of the initial capital had come from selling her family assets in Russia in the early 1970s. Sarah Johnson also found herself in a difficult situation. The prosecution charged her with complicity in financial fraud and money laundering. She faced up to 15 years in prison. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she agreed to cooperate with the investigation, providing detailed information about schemes for siphoning funds from the company. James, who learned the truth about his father from the news, was placed under social services custody. Psychologists noted severe trauma in the teenager, who suddenly found himself at the center of a national scandal. Roxbury Latin School temporarily transferred him to distance learning to shield him from increased media attention. Victor and Marina's children also faced serious consequences. Michael was forced to resign from his position as CFO, although the investigation found no evidence of his involvement in his father's schemes. Jessica, who worked at a prestigious private clinic, took extended leave and went to Europe. Alex, as an attorney focused on protecting family assets from creditors and shareholders, claims the board of directors of Anderson Construction Group held an emergency meeting where they decided to change the company's name and completely renew the management team. More than 30 top managers were dismissed. The auditing firm Marshall & Cole became the subject of an SE investigation and subsequently lost its license. The federal investigation uncovered a complex network of financial schemes created by Victor Anderson. Over the past 20 years, the main mechanism for siphoning funds was a system of fictitious construction contracts with shell companies. Investigators discovered more than 40 shell companies registered in Delaware, Nevada, in various offshore territories. The scheme worked as follows. Anderson Construction Group entered into contracts with subsidiary companies at inflated prices. The difference between the actual cost of work and the contract amount was channeled through a chain of intermediate companies. The ultimate recipients of funds were offshore accounts controlled by Victor. The auditing firm Marshall & Co. played a key role in concealing the schemes. Its owner, James Marshall, turned out to be Victor's longtime golf club friend. For an annual fee of $2 million conducted as consulting services, the firm overlooked obvious violations in financial reporting. Investigators paid special attention to a series of real estate transactions during 2015 to 2020. Anderson Construction Group acquired land plots through shell companies at reduced prices, then resold them to itself through other subsidiary structures at market value. The price difference accumulated in offshore accounts. The total amount of funds siphoned through such operations reached about $28 million. Several bank employees from major financial institutions were also involved in the schemes for commissions of 0.5% of the transaction amount they helped process. Suspicious operations without proper verification. Two managers from Bank of America and one from J.P. Morgan Chase had already pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with the investigation. A separate scheme was developed for financing the Boston family. Sarah Johnson was listed as vice president of a non-existent development department with an annual salary of $400,000. Additionally, she received bonuses and compensations that were actually disguised payments for maintaining the second family. The total amount of such payments over 15 years exceeded $15 million. The trial of Victor Anderson began on March 15, 2024, in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. The prosecution presented 47 counts of charges, including securities fraud, money laundering, tax crimes, and racketeering. The courtroom was packed with journalists and spectators, and the trial was broadcast live on cable news channels. Sarah Johnson served as the key prosecution witness over 3 days. She detailed the mechanisms of financial schemes provided documents, email correspondence, and phone call recordings. Her testimony was corroborated by bank statements and corporate documentation seized during the raids. The former financial controller of Anderson Construction Group, Michael Peterson, confessed that under Victor's direction he created false financial reports for the board of directors and shareholders. He provided investigators with a detailed archive of genuine and forged documents stored on an encrypted hard drive in a bank's safety deposit box. James Marshall, the auditing firm owner, initially denied involvement in the scheme. However, after the prosecution presented recordings of his conversations with Victor made by an employee, he agreed to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. Marshall revealed schemes for falsifying audit reports. Victor's defense was built on the assertion that all financial operations were legitimate business decisions approved by the board of directors. However, the prosecution presented evidence that the board received deliberately false information. Board members testifying as witnesses confirmed they were unaware of the company's true situation. The testimony of bank employees drew special attention from the court. They described how Victor used personal connections and bribes to bypass financial control systems. Surveillance cameras recorded envelope handoffs containing cash in restaurants and golf clubs. The total amount of bribes exceeded $3 million. Financial expert witnesses presented detailed analysis of fund movements through offshore companies. They proved that more than 80% of transactions had no real economic purpose and served exclusively to siphon funds from the company. The scheme included the use of proxy individuals, fictitious contracts, and false invoices. After 6 weeks of trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all 47 counts. On May 12, 2024, Judge Robert Stevenson sentenced Victor Anderson to 25 years in prison and a fine of $100 million at 73 years old. This sentence effectively meant life imprisonment for Victor. Sarah Johnson, thanks to her cooperation with the investigation, received a suspended sentence and was sentenced to 5 years of house arrest. She was also ordered to pay a fine of $5 million. James, her and Victor's son, was placed in Sarah's custody with regular supervision from social services. The teenager began seeing a psychotherapist and prepared to transfer to a different school. Marina obtained the divorce and 75% of joint property, including the mansion in New York suburbs and a significant portion of company shares. She established a charitable foundation to help victims of financial crimes and began actively lecturing on corporate ethics at leading business schools across the country. Anderson Construction Group was reorganized and renamed to New Century Development. Under new management, the company implemented an unprecedented system of financial control and transparency. The company's stock gradually began to recover its value, though it hasn't reached its previous levels. Victor and Marina's children took different paths. Michael founded his own consulting firm specializing in corporate security. Jessica returned to medical practice in Boston, where she unexpectedly grew close to her half-brother. James Alex became a partner at a major law firm specializing in corporate law and compliance.